Well,
Yeah, welcome, Charles.
thanks for having me, everybody. Just before we get going, I'll just do a quick introduction, and I just want to get an idea of where everybody is here. Um, I'm Charles Delfs, and I'm the founder of FM BetterForms, our actual company's Delfs Engineering, and we basically build a web apps, and we have a web app platform for other developers. But how many people here have actually used FileMaker with not? Let's start with actually WebDirect. And just kind of there's actually a method of showing hands. I think it's in the reactions that you can kind of show hands like that. How many people have used WebDirect in production? Not just played around with it, but used WebDirect in production. So let me just expand my window a little bit here
for sure.
Get them all in there. Right. All right. And what about built actual web apps, like say a PHP app or some kind of Node.js with some kind of front end system or something like that? I don't know if you can get rid of your old reactions or if I think they eventually fade away. So you might have
There's a lower hand option.
All right. So just one person from what I see. All right. And everybody develops FileMaker though, right? So I think we're good there. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and I'll talk a little bit about sort of the history of web development and FileMaker. I originally started myself, I guess, back in FileMaker. I don't want to say the original version that I started with because that kind of shows my age, but I started doing web development with around FileMaker. I want to say it's like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there when we had CDML. And I basically gave up at that because that was really exceptionally restrictive. And then we went into instant web publishing, IWP. I was at a Meetup group and I said IWP and somebody yelled out, "What's IWP?" It's like kids. So we had instant web publishing before we had WebDirect, and WebDirect, in my opinion, is actually really excellent. Like I can tell you as an author of software that does something similar. And BetterForms doesn't directly compete with WebDirect. That's not our target audience. But it really is a crazy powerful piece of software, but it does have a couple glaring faults, unfortunately, and that's what makes it really hard to use it in every case, especially scalable type cases. We won't go so much into those faults. Traditional web app building, you had FileMaker, and then you would have some type of backend, usually PHP. If anybody remembers FM Magic, I think it was called, and FM Web Publishing Schools. I think that's what they were called. Michael, I forget his chap's name. He was actually from Toronto as well, I believe, originally.
Wasn't just FM PHP, or am I thinking of a different thing?
Yeah, they had a couple different sites. Michael Petrie's, I think his name was, something like that. And they had basically produced a bit of a framework for Dreamweaver, and Dreamweaver at the time was the dominant app. A web site, not app, because there weren't very many apps, but the dominant website builder. And you would use that, and it would sort of interface, and it had a lot of opinion. And what I mean by opinion is when you have sort of 3 separate pieces of code. You have FileMaker, you have the web server code, and then you have what's running in the browser. Now, going back 10 years, we didn't have a lot of stuff running in the browser. Now we have most apps running directly in the browser. You think of something like Google Chrome, excuse me. You think of our designer, he uses Figma. There's Microsoft 360 Works. All of these, sorry, 360 Works, Microsoft 365. All of these apps run right in the browser. So the shift in terms of software is to move things out of a downloadable desktop client native type application into the browser, because the browser is exceptionally powerful now. The language, JavaScript, native language of the browser, has come along so far. We have really, really good design tools basically built in for developing web apps and things like that too. One of the things that I found is I started using those types of technologies, PHP primarily, and I connect that to FileMaker, and then PHP would serve out my app. And that's typically how most apps are. Now, a lot of people are using Node. Node is just another server-side language that you can develop in. It's a JavaScript-based language, but its architecture is slightly different. And that mechanism or that system or that architecture is pretty good. But one of the glaring problems that it has is it has two sets of code bases. You have FileMaker code. So you create a new invoice, add some line items, take some stuff out of inventory, do all your FileMaker stuff. But now you have this other PHP or Node.js or whatever backend that's running it. And you have this chunk of code and you have the same business logic sitting in there. Right. And if you are like most developers, chances are you don't really have direct access to that chunk of code. I hear all the time that, somebody was working with us for the summer, or they'll say, oh, we had this developer that we contracted, but he's moved on. He's got a full-time job or something. And now they don't have access to this code that's inside this web app. So that was kind of a frustration. And that's actually how I kind of cut my space, because I could go in and take care of that for a lot of companies. And we started to see these common things, these common problems. So we said, let's try to solve that ourselves. So we basically started to develop a product, and our product is called BetterForms. You may or may not have heard of it. And it's a web publishing front end for FileMaker. But one of the major architectural differences is that BetterForms does not have business logic inside it. It only has front end logic, which is things like conditionally hide stuff, some validation on fields, those kinds of things that have to be in the front end. And then it has all the other logic is in FileMaker. So you're not learning another set of another technology that much. You do have to expand a little bit. Anytime we do anything outside of the confines of FileMaker, we're going to have to expand stuff. You want to talk to MailChimp or SendGrid or Twilio, you're going to have to learn some API stuff. You're going to have to learn some JSON. But I think everybody realizes that now, that to expand your set of skills is kind of a necessity. If you want to use a web viewer in FileMaker, you're going to have to learn a little bit of JavaScript. But we don't want to have to become professional JavaScript coders, right? And we also don't want to have to become professional web app developers, because that's a whole other thing. So that's kind of where BetterForms sits in. I think was it Francois? Did you say that you had a web app?
I don't have a web app, but I used a little bit the data API and the OData from the newer FileMaker versions. Yeah.
All right. So that brings me up a couple of things. So FileMaker has always had an XML gateway, and more recently, in the past, 4 versions or so, we've had this data API. So we've had this mechanism for accessing FileMaker data. And although the data API, it's not a traditional API as such, if you've never used it before, it really is a data API. So it's exceptionally low level, basically talk to the tables, write stuff to the tables. You can run scripts and things like that. But it doesn't architect like a whole REST API for you as such. So let's look at some of the things that people build in BetterForms to give you a bit better of an idea. And I think the number one, everything kind of falls into, I would say, 3 categories. Right, almost every app. It's usually some type of client portal. So some kind of interface to your clients where your main business, let's say, is some type of events or something like that. And then you need a way for people to register. So that's probably the first most common use. The next most common use is actually software as a service. Does anybody here have any clients or their own product that is a software as a service, like where it's like a vertical that they're selling?
I do.
And what is it, if you don't mind me asking, if you're allowed to say?
Kind of a management system for a particular industry.
Right. Okay. So this is a really common. That's pure native FileMaker. That app, Marty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a really common use case we have. What we'll do is people will start with something like that. They'll already have something existing, and depending on their architecture in FileMaker, they'll have typically one database, FileMaker database per client. Is that what you have?
Yeah. Well,
Right.
not per client. They all use the same one.
Okay, so it's actually multi-tenant.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Very few of those, right? Very few of those. 25% of our users, believe it or not, have verticals, and virtually none of them have a multi-tenant app to start off with, because it's kind of the holy grail, and it's a lot harder to code in FileMaker, mainly because it's hard to lock down the security and things like that. So you probably had to jump through lots of hoops to make sure things are in track there. All right, so let's have a look. Here's an example of a vertical, kind of It's not exactly the same thing, but let me just find some. Which one am I going to actually open up a new one here? And the other category that we have from verticals is people who have. It's not really a portal, and it's not a software as a service, but it's maybe an in-house app for like field technicians and those kinds of things. I think it's called Master. Yeah, here's one here. This is a vertical. They have multiple databases in the back end. And what this application does is it is used in various cities in California for issuing building permits. And I'm just going to open it up here. And basically, the user here would be like a contractor, a homeowner, and they want to build an add-on to your garage. So in this case, they can come in, they can see I have a couple of existing permits. I can create a new permit as well, but let's go into one of these existing ones. And from here, you can see there's a whole bunch of permit information. And what they've done here is actually the designer of this has taken their app and they've actually made a really complex form really simple. BetterForms supports things like you can see this conditional logic, and then there's more conditional logic on here, so it's compounded between these two fields. We supports things like modals here as well, so there's some information that they can gather there, some additional information, whatever that may be. Right now, what's interesting about this particular app is all of this data that you see here. For example, each city has different requirements that they need to do inspections on, for example, these construction types. So in each one of their different FileMaker databases, they are gathering this data live and sending it back to the front end. The front end is rendering that and making that choice only for that particular city. So what they've done is they've taken multiple FileMaker backends, which is their original file databases, and they've added a single unified web front end. But all the business logic still sits in the back ends of these. The main developer is very, very meticulous with managing his versions and his deployments and things like that. So the user goes through here. There's a payment gateway as well in here, and I guess there's something that's missing here. Have to upload some documents, and after they've done that, they submit their application, and they can see the status of it. And then later on, once it gets approved, they go through and they can find their past projects here. This one's awaiting payment. So if we were to click into that and have a look, there's a similar sort of interface here. But now I can see all my inspections. So this would be a classic example of it's a vertical because the software that they're selling is really running in the main county offices, but this is a portal to that. So it's kind of half and half. Anybody have any questions about this so far? All of the apps, depending on what you're building, are responsive as well. So responsive is it's depending on your use case, which is almost everybody these days. It's kind of an important thing that you need something that people can pull up on their phones. I was amazed a few years ago, a friend of mine, she booked a flight on her phone, and that's something I would never do, right? Because I'm always paranoid about making mistakes. But people are very, very confident now. So you really have to build apps that are responsive and be thinking about mobile first type design. So that's one app. I'll jump to some other things that are a little bit simpler. Here is just a pure portal. Excuse me. EMGS is a company that does medical gas inspections. Their forte is they do the inspections, and they do I think they do some training as well. So if you're in the hospital and you need some oxygen, the delivery system for that oxygen would come through and be inspected by a company like this. So BetterForms builds actual web apps, and we'll build a little app. We'll do some live coding, and we'll build something up in a few minutes here. So in this case, this app is really, really simple. The person who would be operating this is a facility manager type person at a hospital or a long care facility. And here they can log in, they can see some open issues, open quotations, new invoices. And I don't know, we'll go into the quotations here. And you can see here's a whole bunch of quotations. They can download the quotations as well. I think let's see, I think the reports, this particular version is running on this user's, this is a development version. This is not the production app. And it's running on, I think, a Mac Mini in their office, right? Because we're not serving the actual web app out of that software, out of that server, the only data that's coming out of the server is really the data that's on the page here. So it's relatively light. It's not taxing on the server, and that gives you a lot of scalability. Excuse me. So in this case, you can download these reports. Here's some different types of reports. And these are, I believe, containers in this system. So if I want an AEA report, I can generate that, and you can see there's a report. And I think that came from a FileMaker. It's not generated. It wasn't generated on the fly. It could be, but it wasn't in this case. And that's just, you know, so now this operator for the hospital can now grab this information and carry on their business. What else? I think that's it for this particular one. And guys, if you have questions, please, by all means, just interrupt. Don't worry about that. Here is a different one. This is it's technically a software as a service, but what this company does, it's kind of interesting. If you eat virtually anything, it has palm oil in it. And 40% of the world's palm oil comes from Indonesia and Malaysia. And this company does analytics on the traceability and, you know, determine did it come from a rainforest and the plot of land and all kinds of stuff like that. And they do all of these infometrics or analytics on the supply chain. And like any supply chain, you have, you know, the consumer at the very end. That would be somebody like Pepsi or some type top company like that. And then going down the supply chain, there's refineries, and there's mills, and then there's crushers, whatever they are. And there's all the way down to some guy who has a little plot of land, and he's kind of literally working the land and bringing it into the local shop. So this software tracks all of those, all of that supply chain. And the way they do that is they send surveys, and it's kind of neat. So there's really two apps here. This is the app that the high-level company, the requester, the person who's wanting to have this survey done, who's consuming the product, and has the accountability, like Kraft company or, you know, Kraft Foods, that kind of thing. This is what they would see. They would come in here and they can see, okay, I have 16 surveys, and this is all of these apps, guys, are 100% powered by FileMaker, right? There's no, there's not even actually an equivalent UI in FileMaker. It's just FileMaker scripts and FileMaker tables. Especially for this one has no UI at all. And in this case, I can come in and I can actually drill down into some of these things. Like I see the 36 surveys don't have any data. So I can drill into those, and there's some incomplete ones. So I can start to develop these, I don't know, it was prior year, I guess, or something. There's 2 surveys in here now, and there they are there. So we can kind of drill down through all of this data. And the way this data comes into the system is through another app. And this is a survey tool. This tool here is sent to everybody in the supply chain that they know of. So if I'm a refinery, I get my supply from various people downstream. So they start off in the survey, and there's no login. If you notice, they didn't get a login, but there is a unique token in here, and that's effectively their authentication. They can continue, make some changes. They go into the app itself, and I think I just noticed there's something off right here, and this is a dev version, so it's possible it's being worked on or something like that. I should have checked that earlier. But they can go into like their industry database, and they can add things like, if I search for something, here's a whole bunch of mills. There's about 50 or 100,000 records that it's sorted and searched through on FileMaker using a traditional go-to layout, perform find, and return the found set, but it returns a truncated version of the found set, just maybe 20 or 30 records. And I can add that record in, and I can add that into the mill. And now I got these added into here. I carry on to my next step. And I think unfortunately, there's something off with this one here. Maybe we should use a production one, but I don't really want to add data into it. So they can also go through and they can filter things by country, and they can filter stuff by various related data within the application as well. So the nice thing here, the main takeaway is that there's two parts. There we go. It's probably because I used the link on a previous system. There's two parts of this app. After the user submits all of this data, they can also actually, and it's kind of neat. It's if you think about this in a data model aspect, since it's a supply chain, if I want somebody downstream to fill out my data, I can actually send them a sublink of this survey to them. They fill it out. It all comes back up into the top level of the system, which is over here. And then they can generate reports, and they can do different things like that as well in their system. Any questions about any of this so far? We've kind of looked at these are kind of like bigger, more robust finished apps. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in the light aquatic.
Pardon me?
Bill Murray's character. Oh. Lenovo called me back. I'm gonna molding on the back of the
Yeah, there we go. All right, totally unrelated.
I'm taking executive function and muting people.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed on your URL, you have subdomains to fmbetterforms.com.
Yeah, you can have custom domains as well, though.
Okay.
Yeah, these ones are for development, because you don't want to be going into your DNS and setting everything up for something that's not necessary, right? So, but it's very easy to add those in. I'll show you in a little bit.
Okay. Thanks.
You certainly don't have to have a branded domain, although I kind of like it, but it's maybe not totally good. So yeah. All right, let's actually build some stuff, because I think that's kind of maybe more fun. And I'm just going to close some of these tabs. Oh, here's another app here. Actually, this one's kind of interesting. This is just a very small app, and it's used for delivery service personnel. And I don't think I got the right password in here, so let me just try. I had to go to the 7.8 to get the real secure one. And this is delivery service personnel, and what they do is they receive every day they would log in, and they would see, okay, these are my deliveries for the week, and I can go into Pharmatica, and I can go through here. You can imagine these are sort of like portal rows, and these are items. These are some contacts. Looks like there's some bad data in here though. And these are lines or parts of the estimate that they can enter some stuff. And I think they can enter some notes. So no, they can't enter them there. But they go through, they show up, like a cable person, and make their entries. And then when they're done, they go off to the next one. They mark that done, and it shows up as being done. Very simple. It's like a 3-4 page app. There's a little bit of mechanism happening behind the scenes, but it's a relatively simple type of app. And it's really meant, I'm just going to open this up for a second. It's really meant to be used on a mobile device, say something like, I think it's funny. Chrome just had an update, and they just got rid of all of the, where is it here? They got rid of all of the little bezels that you can have, I think. Show media query, hide device frame. So it should be showing. But, they used to have one that you could show a nice iPhone or whatever around it. It wasn't for all of them. And I think they just pulled the plug, and they said, we're just going to give you the dimensions, so they don't have to maintain the look and feel. But that's kind of the idea. All right. So what I want to do is I want to jump over, and I figured we could build an app. And as I'm building, I'll just explain as I go along. I'm going to go kind of quick, and only because that way you don't have to, the goal here is not to learn exactly how to do it. The goal is to learn that these are the skill sets that you require to build an app. So I have a really, really simple page here. It's got like first name and last name on it. And you can visit it. It's called demodev.fmbetterforms.com. You can ignore the rest of that stuff. And I'm going to paste it in the chat group here. Maybe I should wait till we get it done a bit more. I'll paste it in the chat there, so you can pull it up too. As I'm working on it, you can leave it open. And what I want to do, and I also have a database in the background, and we'll connect that up later on. But I was thinking, like this Meetup group, I was trying to think this morning what I wanted to build. And I thought it would be kind of neat to build like a little event registration app. Right, I like to speak at different events and things like that. So I figured, okay, I'll make a little vanity event registration app. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over to BetterForms, the editor, And BetterForms is a cloud-based application. So that means everything is sitting in the browser. And this is what the homepage of the software looks like. You can see I have various apps along here that I can drill into. I have things like servers and file assets in my account and all that normal app stuff. And I have one in here called marketing. Oh, I got to refresh here. That's my bad. Excuse me. Okay, marketing. There we go. Nope, sorry, that's not the wrong one. I want one called demo. There. Okay. And what I'm going to do is this particular app, I'm going to, I want to start adding some stuff onto here. So mainly what I want to do is I want to add a, let me start again here, just so I can show you what I'm doing. All right, what I want to do is I want to go into my application and I want to, first of all, I don't want to edit my live one. So BetterForms supports stages. We have a development stage, we can have a staging stage and a production stage. So this way you can be developing in something and then later on it's very, very easy to deploy. It's kind of a couple button clicks and I can deploy to production. And I would say next and I hit the button and it would deploy my app from here over to here. All right, we can have separate domains and separate databases, separate FileMaker servers. So you can have any configuration you want. If you want to share your production and your live thing with the same piece of data in FileMaker, you can. Some people do that. If you want to separate it into two totally or four separate machines, you're able to do that as well. We don't have any opinion that way. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to go into
I have
go
a
ahead.
question on that. I was just looking at your FileMaker servers. If you have dev and live, does that count against your server total for your subscription? So like if you have dev on one server and live on
Yes, it
another?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah. Yeah, they're slightly separate. Our citizen developer plan, I'll show you plans later on, but our citizen developer plan has 2 servers, I believe, that you can connect to. So basically a dev and a production. And then if you go into the more advanced pro plans, you can do as many as you want, any configuration there. All right, so I'm going to go into my development branch, and right now it's at version 20, and I can see that I've edited some pages, but that's okay. I'm going to go into my pages section, which is a page is like a layout in FileMaker, right? It's almost the same type of an idea. And I happen to have one called job application. Here it is, just so we can see it here. And that's what I'm going to edit here, because this is this page right here. All right, so if we look on here, and you probably all used JSON before, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. Basically, we use some JSON to edit the page. And we do that for a specific reason. We are looking at coming out within 2 quarters around the summertime. We're gonna have a little bit more of a what you see is what you get type interface, a little bit more in that direction. But we don't wanna lose the ability for advanced developers to really fine tune things. So I have this key called fields, and I have 2 fields in here. You can see there's my first one there, and there's my second one in this this array of fields. And I basically want to search my snippets. I'm going to add an email field. So I find this email element, and I'm just going to add it in. I'm going to paste it in at the end of this array, paste it. I'm going to hit save, and you notice this page just refreshed. So now I've added this email field on here. These fields by default are responsive. Now we can adjust those breakpoints. Maybe we don't want the email field to even appear on a certain small screen or something like that. We don't need the last name. We can just use first name, for example, or whatever you want to do as far as your design work goes. All right, so we've added that. This is an event registration. So I think these are the things I need at the minimum, but I also need to be able to pick what the event is. I think that's kind of an important thing. So I want some kind of a selector. So I have a couple here. One's called a simple multi-select, and I'm going to grab that. And let's see, what do you guys think? Should we put it down here maybe? We'll put it after the email field. So here's my email field. So if I just paste this in, it's actually going to go in a funny spot here. And you can see what happened is it went over here, and that's not exactly ideal. Generally, this is from a UX thing, and you start to think about this kind of stuff when you develop web apps more than when you develop FileMaker apps. And we're starting to do this in FileMaker more, is you have to sort of think about the user experience. And it's not just about looking pretty, it's about being functional. And this is something I really learned. I don't know if you've ever worked with a UX designer. we have two that consult with us, and then we have a full-time designer, Pearson, as well. And he does almost all of our designs. And they're not concerned about looking good. They're concerned about functioning well, if that makes sense, right? It's not about how good it looks, it's how good it works. And this is not intuitive because it's going across. This piece of information is not, it's kind of different from the email. So I really want to put this on a separate line because that would make more logical sense. So I need to have a line break or clear the rest of this. On a small screen, it works proper. But on the big screen, it doesn't. So I need to change that. So I'm going to put a line break in there, or clear, and it's called just that. And I'm just going to scroll down here, and I'm going to put it in between my email and my multi-select here. I'm just going to paste that in there. All right, getting better. And I think this is going to have some long description names, so I'm going to make it longer. Right now, it's only like 3 out of 12 columns wide, so I'm going to make this bigger. So let's go to this input select, and there is a key in here and right here. And I'm just going to change this to 6 from instead of 3 columns wide. It's going to become 6 columns wide. And there we go. That's better. I'm going to put some stuff that's getting cut off by the end of the page, but I'm going to put some more things in there, and we'll fix that in a second. So we're kind of getting close. Let's put a little bit of a header in there too. So plain text is entered in. If you want to put like some static text at the top that says what this is, it's using an HTML block. We don't have to really know a ton of HTML. And I'm just going to paste that in there. BetterForms has a built-in HTML editor. And here it is here. So I can see there's this H tag. I'm going to change this from an H tag to an H2 to an H1. And I'm going to put in my own vanity, I'm going to call it Charles Chats. And that is going to be the name of my form signups. All right, Charles Chats sign up, something like that. Good enough for now, and we'll save that. Okay, so there we go. We got this C chat, first name, last name, email. We need to put these. It says car, truck, toy. It's like a default dummy list. So I need to put some real data in there. Excuse me. So I could hard code the data, and for some use cases, it may make sense to hard code this data. You can see it's just a JSON array here. And in this case, it's not even an array of objects. It's an array of strings. And it says car, boat, cottage. And I could call those event 1, 2, and 3. But I happen to have some data over in FileMaker. So I'm going to later on, I'm going to grab that data from FileMaker, and we'll populate it into here in a second. We need a few more things here. I'm going to put another box for special comments and descriptions. So I'm going to put a text area in here. Text area box, and we'll put that in here. And I think that's going to be in a bad spot. So let me add another line break in there. So I'm just cutting and pasting right now. And if you've never used much JSON, don't fear it too much. I've literally worked, and I'm not exaggerating with this, almost 300 developers. And we've done pair coding just because I do most of the onboarding with BetterForms. We do a lot of one-on-one training. And even the people who've never used JSON, literally in 2 days, they're reading it like Neo from the Matrix, right? And if you haven't, I'll just give you a couple real quick, crazy blast, fast pointer. Square brackets, sorry, we'll start with square brackets. Square brackets are like a table in FileMaker. Curly braces are like a record. Individual lines are like the fields, and that's it, right? Just like in FileMaker, you can have a number field, you can have a string field, and JSON, you can have a number, a string, and a Boolean field. So that's the value over here. So this is the key, this is the value, that's the record, that's the table. That's it, that's JSON. Okay, that's really simplified, but it's nothing, it's not a language, it's a formatting mechanism, right? It's just a syntax. All right, so we got that saved. Let's have a look. Looking pretty good here. I don't think I need like 3 lines for this. Maybe I'll make that a little smaller. So let's scroll down to here. It says 6 rows. We'll make it 3. And then finally, I want to add a button on the bottom to register. So let's add a button. Or if you're a millennial, it's a button. I've noticed that. Somebody pointed that out the other day, and it's like, oh yeah, they all do say that.
It could also be a button.
Button, yeah, exactly, right? So Shows your age, how you pronounce things.
It's totally true. If you're really young, one of my friends says button, like a super clear T.
Yeah, yeah. I'm from, and I'm going to say it the way we say it. I'm from Toronto. And technically I said Toronto, but of course it's not. So I have to really articulate and say Toronto, right? Which sounds really funny if we're from here to say that, but I guess it's like every city. Okay,
Well,
so I
people
think
from Montreal, it's not pronounced that way. Anyway.
Oh, I gotta give you some color for this button here. Let me just do that really quick. I'm gonna put some background blue, and I'm gonna give it this. There we go. Okay, so now we should have a button. Great. It's pretty bright, but it's working, and it's not doing anything. We need to wire this up, and even though I'm building a form, BetterForms that's how it started off, because we started building a product where we could make these dynamic registration type forms. But it's really, majority of our users actually build apps, right? They're interactive. You could do this in any form builder tool, and you could probably do it a bit faster because they have a bit maybe different interface. But what you can't do in a form builder is what I'm going to do now. Is I want to grab data from FileMaker, and I want to populate this. And then when I hit this button, I want it to send the data back into FileMaker. And let's do the sending into FileMaker first, and then we'll populate this with real data. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to go back over to here, and in my servers page, I'm going to not go onto that page because it exposes my servers. It's not a big deal. They're locked down and stuff, but it's probably better not to. But I basically add a server. It's really, really simple. I think I can actually do it in one of these other organizations, possibly. Yeah, no. And I add a server. I just added the IP address for the server and a friendly name. And I also have a selection of button. It's a radio button that says, do I want to pick the data API or the XML gateway? And that's it. Right over on my FileMaker server, I need to enable those things, enable the data API or the XML gateway. And then in BetterForms over here in my environment, when I set this environment up, remember these environments can be totally standalone. So when I say edit here, I set the credentials. So this is using our DEng3 server, and it's using the XML gateway. And it's connecting to this, this is a small helper file that BetterForms uses. And I set the credentials in here for that. And that's it. So that's the setup on this side. Over in FileMaker over here, let's go back to here before I forget. Over in FileMaker here, and I have just a very simple dummy app. It's not like a complicated app. It's just got some various scratch tables and one relationship, but that's only used for certain examples. It's not even really needed. And that's it. So I've gone through and I've pasted in some custom functions. I've pasted those in off of my clipboard, and they're mostly custom functions. We're going to use a couple of today, and they're mostly used for manipulating JSON. And I have a field here, or a table, I should say, called job applications, but we can imagine the name is event registrations instead of job applications. It's the same difference. First name, last name, email. Well, we can add the additional fields that we need maybe for the event and things like that. And one other thing here is I pasted in some scripts, and I pasted these off a clipboard. It's a folder of scripts, and it's this folder right here. Because this is my demo file, I have a few extra folders in here from different demos, and it looks like one of our team put something in here too. But I have this one called job application, and it's really just some empty scripts. You can see that, not this one, these two here. These two are just empty scripts. There's nothing in them. There's a little bit of logging, and that's helpful for debugging, and it just exits with a true, and that's it. And the reason we do an exit, this is more of a FileMaker thing. The reason we exit with true is we can determine if that script ran or not, right? In case it gets missing or deleted or something for error trapping. All right, so let's do this. Let's save this. What we want to do here is we want to, when we click the button on, now I'm conscientious about buttons. When we click the button on the editor, or sorry, in the display here, I want something to happen. Right, we want to basically run a script, because remember, we want to keep the business logic in FileMaker. And you can do this if you scratch build apps using PHP, Node.js, whatever. You can do the same architecture that BetterForms does. right? It's not a proprietary concept, right? But most people don't do it. Most web developers especially don't, because they don't want to touch FileMaker. They don't like going in there and having to learn that. They're really comfortable on the outside. So they stay within their comfort zone, right? Our comfort zone is more over here. So we're going to keep it there. What I want to happen is I want to push this button and I want to take the data from this page. Let's look at what that data would look like. Oops. I don't know why I bother correcting that. And let's go. There we are. And we'll pick something and to build cool things. And we should change the name of that. It says to objective. I'll call it special notes or something like that for our registration. And I want to click this button and I want to take this data. So what's the data look like? I'm going to open up the BetterForms developer tools and I'm going to hide this for a second. Ignore this guy right here just for a sec. And I have this object, right? And it's a nice little object. It's got name first, name last, email. It says vehicle. I should change that because that's going to be event. And a key called objects, we'll put those to comments. So let's go change those first. So I'm just going to use find, and it was vehicle. There it is. There's the key. That's the key that this piece of data will get stored in, kind of like the field, but it's not a field yet. And we'll call it event. And then the other one was objectives. And there it is there. And I'm going to call that comments. Okay, so I save that. And if I put something in here, and let me collapse this for a second. Comments, there it is. Okay, so it changed the key. We changed the key that the JSON data gets stored under. Does that make sense so far, what we've done? Silence can be interpreted a lot of ways. Okay, I'm gonna assume that it does. All right,
yes
now
for everyone.
Now we need to give the button an action, right? Like in FileMaker, buttons don't have actions until you. I got some on my homepage here, and until you click, and it says it literally says action here, and what you want it to do. So BetterForms is the same thing. Let's go back. And I have an actions key for my button down here. And what I want to do is I want to run a hook or a script in FileMaker. I want FileMaker to intercept the workflow and receive that data and do whatever it wants to do with it. So it's called a utility hook or a hook. And I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste this right in this array here, paste it in there and save. Okay, so there it is there. So now we're done. Now, if you have this open, do me a favor, don't press. You can press it, doesn't matter actually. You can press the button if you have it open in your browser, it doesn't matter. All right, so let's go over to here. And what's going to happen is when I click that button, it's going to run this script. Now there's nothing in the script, so I don't expect any outcome. So let's start with some kind of a hello world. And if this was FileMaker and we want to do a hello world, we do show custom dialog. And we would set some settings in here. This ran, this is cool. Thank you for registering your event, something like that. BetterForms almost the same way, but of course we can't use show custom dialog because that's a FileMaker thing. We're going to communicate with the front end through some global variables. So I'm going to do set variable. And I'm going to go $BF, and it's called actions. This is kind of a reserved global. $BF actions. There's about 6 of these that we use to communicate with. And in here, instead of saying show custom dialog, and if this looks a little different, I just installed this monkey bread plugin. So there's a little bit of pollution on my layout here, but just kind of ignore that. It's quite useful for doing searches and stuff like that, though, I find. And it's free as well, at least for that feature. So what I want to do is I have one called modal, and it's called BF set action show modal. It's one of those custom functions that we installed earlier. And then it basically gives me the same settings as show custom dialog. What is the title? I don't need a title. That is the type. This is the icon type. And I'm going to put a success icon. What is the body? I'm going to put thank you for registering. Something like that. Registering. There we go. And then the theme, we can go light or dark. I'm going to go light because all the cool kids go with the dark themes these days. Oops. And finally, we don't need any other additional options. So I'm just going to leave that empty. And that's it. So let me do this. Let me do that and save this. And then let's go back over to here and kaboom. Right. So what's happened here? Here's it's just a little hello world, but the real important part is what's going on. I clicked the button on the front end. First of all, I didn't wire anything up in terms of JavaScript. If you've ever had to do any kind of front end stuff to wire up a button, old school, you use something like jQuery. There's some newer tools, but then you'd have to call FileMaker, negotiate some token stuff because you can't just talk to the data API directly. So you're going through some middleware, negotiating that. Then you're finding the right command to run to the right script in the right folder to execute a script, and then come back and do some stuff. And then you have to have some code that draws the window. Okay. So what I've done is, the only thing I've done is I've said to the button, run a script. And the button, this layout is tied to this folder here. So that I don't have to worry about the context. It's kind of like code context, if you will. In my utility hook, I added one command that added one single custom function that shows the results on my page here. So now let's do all the real FileMaker stuff. So let's do go to layout, and I'm going to try to go quick here. And we'll create a new record because it's a registration, and set field, excuse me, name first. I won't even get into the naming conventions, but name first is right, and so is ID. The rest of you guys got to go. All right. Okay, so we want to get the data. The data comes from BetterForms in a variable called $BF_model. And oops, I don't know where that log came in there. BF, it comes in this variable, but it's an object, right? It's a JSON object. So we have to get out of that object. It says JSON get element. Out of the object, we're going to get name first. Okay, so we just do that, and that's it. So we grab that. That's pure FileMaker stuff. So we got, what else? We got name first. We got name last. We have email. So this is name last. And if we have time, we'll put a payment gateway on as well. Last. Function enter is a keystroke. Learn a new keystroke a day. And this one is going to be email. I wish there was one to go into the email that past that first dialog box. That would be good. And what else? We have comments. We have comments. I think that's one of them.
Space bar.
Yeah, that's not for the second field though. I mean, the junior field, or I call it the Maverick field that you can't really code in. Let me try it. I'll try. I don't think there's, I don't know. I don't know if I called it comment or comment. So let's check. Put something in here. I'll check in the development tools. And it's called comments, I called it. Okay. So it's called comments, set field, get comments. That's where it's going to get it out of there. And it's going to put in the comments field. And I think the other one is the, let's see what this is. We called it events. Event singular. Okay, and we'll have to put that in there. I don't think I have an event field, so let me, what did I do here? Oh, cursor's not right here. Duplicate, save as I go. And we'll put one called, we'll put it in the, let's put in the address field, because that will really confuse the next developer. All right. All right. And what do we need to do? One more thing is we're going to explicitly commit this record because it's not running in the context of the user interface, which the user naturally commits the record as they move from field to field or off the field or off the layout and so on. And let's save that. Let's go over to our job applications and let's see, that's saved. So we can jump over to here and now we should be able to do something. Let me clear this record out. And let's go, Charles was here and see@mail.com. We're going to pick the cottage. We'll fix those in a second. To see cool things. All right. Oh, look at this. Somebody beat me. Really?
That was me. Ha.
Oh, man. That's okay. But that's cool.
I have to say, it was so fun. It's so very web direct to watch the website kind of appear as you were coding
Yeah.
with no refresh or anything. I mean, that web direct does that too, but it's really, super helpful for developing.
So I should mention, we really try to practice what we preach, right? So there's mine, and you can jump onto that link. It's in the chat and start posting away. I'll delete these so you can see them come in, because it's more fun when you hit the button, you see it show up over here. This editor that I'm using here, this is actually built in BetterForms. We didn't use any proprietary tech here, right? 100% of our product is actually built out of itself, at least the editor. We have underlying code, of course, that does all the magic. But the editor itself is just an app, right? It's just a proof that you can build an entire organization on a platform. The way we refresh this page is we use a feature called messages. BetterForms has the ability to send messages either from FileMaker or from between two tabs, like between my tab and your tab and that kind of thing. So we can send those direct messages, and they have very low latency, about eight well, it depends where you are, but a minimum of about 8 milliseconds up to about 70, 80 milliseconds if you're going across the country. So because of that, we haven't done it yet, but you can build, Pong games and things like that. It's totally possible to do. And we have some analytics boards. So there we go. So Francois entered one in here. Now, problem is, this is not, these are not events. So let's do that now. So here's what we're going to do next. What I want to do, and I'll keep scrolling this up. What I want to do is simply select the motorcycle. Yes. Let me change that wording there too. So it says select a toy. Let's just select event, and my zoom is always in the way. It's some kind of Zoom's law. That's a thing. And it says simple select. We should say select event. Select event. I have this set text expander type thing, which is pretty good. But sometimes random stuff pops up. Okay, so that changed that. And sorry if you were entering something in, it would have refreshed. Now, this wouldn't refresh on your production app, but I have the development tools turned on, so that makes the app live. So that's why it's doing that, okay? If it was in production, you wouldn't have the dev tools on. You wouldn't have that button down in the bottom corner and things like that. Okay, so what we want to do is before the page draws, I need to go to FileMaker and I need to gather some data, primarily the events, and return them. And then I need to connect that data from those events up to the dropdown as the options. If this was FileMaker, I would do a go to layout, perform find, or maybe I'd already have a value list that's based on some fields or something like that. And then I'd wire that value list up into the dropdown box. Almost the same, a little bit different though. But it's really simple in terms of code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the integration section here, and I'm going to click on this. It says enable on-form request. And when enabled, this will run a script in FileMaker. So I'm going to turn that on, and I'll hit save so I don't forget. And then I'm going to jump over to FileMaker. And let's go into our script workspace again. And I have another script here. We're all done with this one for now. And let's just close that. Okay, I have one just above this called on form request, and it has nothing in it. I'm just going to scratch this out because it was left over. And here's what I want to do. I want to basically find all my events. Now I have a table in here that does have events in it. Let's find it right here. It's got the date, the name, the description, the cost, is published, a Boolean, and an image URL. And then it's got this thing here, and this is key. And you can use this in your regular FileMaker daily coding. This is a great technique. It's a key, we just call it as JSON, and it's a calculation. And the calculation renders a JSON object of the fields that I'm interested in. So it returns a JSON object of the stuff that I want to surface or I want to use. So I'm going to start with an ID, definitely need that. It has a date, image URL, name, description, and cost, right? Basically the stuff that's in here. I don't know what this test is. I don't know, something else, right? And that's it. And it returns it as a text. And it gives me a nice JSON object. Remember I said the curly braces, if you're not familiar with JSON, are kind of like the record. Well, this is going to produce one of those curly brace objects. All right, so let me save that. And what I'm going to do is let's go over to the events Events here, just so it's in context. And I have some actual events here, sort of fake ones. And let's go into FileMaker here. So instead of doing a traditional go to file, perform layout, find all that kind of stuff to find it, can totally do that. But one of the design patterns that we found that works really, really well and it's pretty performant is to use execute SQL. Now, if you're like me, I always cut and paste my execute SQL because I use it so infrequently that I can't just write it freehand, right? So we have a custom function that makes it really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call set variable. I'm going to call this variable events, plural. This is naming convention, so that tells me it's kind of an array. And we're going to use that execute SQL, but we have the custom function is called get column as array. And what this does is it finds this column, it returns it as an array, all right, a JSON array. So put square braces around, and a get column or a execute SQL will normally have, say, by default, carriage returns. So it replaces those carriage returns with commas, puts square braces around. That's it. It's not really complicated. When the field, we'll say is published, is 1. So let's have a look at that in a second. So I'll just read this again because it can be a little bit here. So it's a custom function that finds all of the events as JSON. So the JSON objects, put square braces, and so it makes them a valid JSON array. When the events is published, so that's my flag to turn it on and off, is true. And of course, that could be a calculation or whatever. So if we were to go into here.
That's another one of those functions that would be super useful in daily FileMaker development. By
Absolutely.
the way. It looks really cool. I have a use for that like all today.
It's crazy powerful because you don't have to return. We have another one, just get column. And you don't have to return, if you a JSON array, you can return just a value list, right? And 90% of the finds are based on single criteria, but we also have one called 2 fields. And that's the other 8%. And then the last 2% are maybe 3 fields or something very complex. But if I paste this in here, you can see, oh, that's kind of ugly. Let's do this. JSON format element, up, boom. So now, check this out. This is that same function. Now you notice I didn't care about the context here because SQL doesn't matter, right? So that's really important because that makes your apps more robust, because now it's pretty much impossible to have some kind of context error. And that's a huge thing in FileMaker. Right? So by using this design pattern, you've gotten rid of that. So here it is. There's my objects. There they are. Each one of those is a record, like I was saying. And then there's my table. Okay, so that's what we want to grab. So that's good so far. And then finally, we need to tell this to BetterForms. So we do set variable, and we need to communicate with BetterForms. It's through one of these globals, and it's called model. Just the same place we picked the data out. We're going to put some data in. And it's going to be JSON set the data in there. Within here, we're going to put a key called events, plural, and value. It's going to be $events. Oops. And finally, it's a JSON array. I personally always prefer to explicitly cast the type of variable so that if it fails loudly now rather than quietly later on. Some people I see even put numbers because this represents a constant from FileMaker's perspective. And I think that's a terrible practice personally. I think it should be very readable. Okay, for saving those 7 keystrokes. All right, so that's it. Events, model, save. Now FileMaker is going to come along, run this, pick this stuff up and put it in the front end. Now you probably already saw that I had some development data in there turned on because I kind of did this as a test playing around this morning. So I'm going to turn that development data off here. So this was kind of like hard-coded data in the page. I'm going to turn that off. So that's reset. And let's go back over to here. And did I save this? I'm not sure if I did. Let me just do that. Yes. Okay. So now, oops. So now I have these events. Now, how do I know they're real? Let's turn some off. Let's go 0, 0. 0, and how many more is there? Oh, there's only one. These ones are already off, so make this one 1. Okay, so right now, going vertical and software as a service, oops, is the only enabled one. So if I go back to here, I refresh this page, we should end up with a single item. I'm on a development version of this server, so I just give this, I just broke our system. Somebody was probably experimenting with something. We discovered a recent bug, actually. It's actually a bug with FileMaker. And and it's not too common. And what happens if your system gives it too many requests too quick, like really like within milliseconds apart, the FileMaker hangs, the gateway hangs. So I'm just going to give that a couple seconds. So in the meantime, so that it'll reset automatically here. It's because I'm using a development server, so I apologize about that. But that's okay. I'm going to turn this data back on for a second. I want to continue building my page, and I want to make it really, really cool. Right now, it's kind of boring, right? It's kind of boring with in here. Okay, this is not really overly exciting. So I need to connect this data up, first. So here's how we do that. So let's go down a little bit. And oops, let's find our multi-select, which is right here. And right now, here's the values. The values are hard-coded. So I want to turn these into a calculation. And I want to get the calculation from the data that came back from FileMaker. So to turn it into a calc is pretty easy. You say underscore calc. And then I got to replace this because it's not going to be hard-coded anymore. And here I'm going to put, technically it's JavaScript, but it's just really a reference to the variable. It's going to be model.events. And I'm going to save that. Okay, now we go back over to here and there's my events. Now, of course, that looks terrible, right? Because the entire event object is displaying. BetterForms doesn't know which key to show you is the thing, so it shows all of them. So I really want the one that's called, I think it's called name. Let's see. Somewhere, if I can find it. There it is, name. All right, so we do that pretty simple. We just add a key called label. And there's examples for all of this stuff. Name. There, and let me save that. And there we go. So here's now my events, right? There's my events. I'm just seeing if that's fixed yet. No, it takes about 5 minutes to reset, automatically reset. So, excuse me. And there are my events now. So that's not bad. In a second, you'll see them come from FileMaker as soon as this resets. And then what I want to do is maybe I want to go a little fancier. Has anybody done very much web viewer stuff, like things in the web viewer?
Yeah, I've done some, certainly.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit over the years.
Perfect. So you know a lot of most common things probably like charts and stuff like that, right? UI stuff though is really, really nice. And the things I'm about to do now, you can pretty much do almost exactly in the web viewer, almost. What I want to do is I want to show it like really nice what these events are, right? Because I want to make this thing functional. So I'm going to add, I already have this HTML block here. And I want to edit it, but I want to put in some stuff that's going to show my images up and show all my events and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to a site called Tailwind Components, it's called. And I've installed already in BetterForms this library called Tailwind. And it's an architectural CSS type thing, but you don't have to know any CSS. That's the cool thing about it. And I found one in here. It was on one of these pages. So let me see if I can find it. These are all different, like sort of widget or bits of pieces. And I want one with a picture. And that's like too much picture. And this is no picture. So I'm just going to, let me see if I can find it. It's on I think it's on the 5th page. Kind of like this, but I want them all the same size. So yeah, this one here, whoever designed this didn't do a great job. See, they're all different heights. So I don't want to use that. All right, this is open source, so it's it's hit and miss what you get. This one looks pretty good though. I like this one here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that, and I'm literally going to just do this. I could look at the code and figure out what all this is, but I'm just going to copy it. Because I don't know about you, but that's how I learned most of my stuff. Copy, paste, hunt around for what to debug. Let's go over to BetterForms, and I'm going to paste this in here, literally verbatim. I am going to delete some commented out stuff at the top, and I'm going to get rid of my C chats at the top because their thing looks way better than my kind of trashy looking one. So I'm going to go with their design. So here we go, and let's have a look. You can actually build responsive stuff. So it's already responsive, right? Somebody else has done all his work. I'm really good at cutting and replacing and cheating, if you will. So I'm going to change this to from our blogs. I don't even want this thing, our blog bit. So I'm going to delete that. Our recent news, there it is there. I want to put C chats events, something like that. And we'll change this as, what can I say that's self-deprecating here? We can talk way too much. Something like that. Okay. All right. Now, this is okay, but it's static data, right? And wrong pictures and all kinds of stuff like that. So we need a way of managing this stuff. So BetterForms has a built-in architecture, and I'm getting into like kind of, I'd call it intermediate stuff now. Before it was kind of like basic BetterForms, kind of like FileMaker, building a recipe database. Now I'm starting to do something more complicated, use portals, master detail layouts, related records, that kind of stuff. I'm kind of getting into around that level of BetterForms development. So I got this thing here, and I don't really need to understand this because it's kind of a little bit cryptic, but what I can do is I can kind of fold it. And if I fold it just right, I can see that there's like 3 things here. And this is not, and I know there's like 3 things here. So if I was to delete one of those, perfect, I see it delete. Okay, so let's go there, one more. And really, now I have just one single objecty thing. But what I want to do here, and you can sort of see it better there. What I want to do is I want to repeat it. I want it to repeat. So I'm going to go inside this tag, and this is like one of the 2 commands I need to know. It's called v-for. And if anybody's ever developed in BASIC, you know, beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction language, I guess it was called, something like that. That's one of the very first languages I started learning in, and they had like a for next loop, right? And this is almost the same thing. It's a loop. And what we're going to do is we want to loop over a model. We want to say for every event in model.events, I want to repeat this chunk, and that's it. So we go event in model.events. And you see what it just did. I have some development data here that I've taken already to put in, and it actually drew all of these events. That's pretty cool. Now it says December 22, 2023. I'm just going to do cut and replace 2023. I find that in my thing here. If this was FileMaker, how would you do a merge? You do something like this, right? You go table, : field, right? We do something like that. BetterForms almost the same. It's curly braces. And if I say the word event, that's the singular. Look, I get all this stuff. That's way too much stuff. I want event. Remember, it's JSON. Event.date. Okay, that's done. Boom, that's live data now. Okay, now the meet auto manager thing. Auto manage thing. Auto, there we are down here. I want to replace that. So curly braces, event.name. Okay. It's kind of a long name, some of them different heights. We can easily add just I think it's called line clamp 2. There we go. Automatically takes care of that. And then lorem ipsum, totally don't want that. So let's just do the last one. Event.description. Okay. And we're gonna we should probably limit the lines of that. I don't know how long they are. Let's see what it is. Looks like. Actually, let's do it. Let's see what it looks like. For save, and kaboom. Okay, almost there, right? And you can see how something's like starting to take shape here. And let me just make sure that are we back alive here? Yes, we are. Okay, so let me just do this. Let's go back to here. Enable on-form request. Save, and one event. That's my live event. Let's make some other ones live. One, and let's adjust. Oh, the picture is not right. Okay, I got real pictures. Oops, I am hitting save in here. That's funny. So let's go back. And now you can see these are real events. So I need to do 2 more things. We have the real events right here. So I can pick the event, right? There it is. These are only the event. And look, if you notice, there's only 3 of them in here, or 2, 3 of them in here. So this is all live data now, right? coming from FileMaker. Maybe we'll tighten up this space here too when we go in there. And we'll also reduce these number of lines. And then the last thing, and look at this. It's responsive out of the box because somebody else did that for me, right? They figured it all out. I didn't do anything but copy and replace. I literally just replaced the one tags and I iterated over it. That's it. Okay, so it's kind of correct. What else do we need to do? Change the picture. So let's do that. We have a picture URL I saw in here. Is this kind of making sense? Like this, where you can start to, usually what happens around this time is most people say, holy cow, now I can actually build the stuff that I see in the rest of the world. 100% powered by FileMaker. Let's go into our code here again, and we'll just find that image. There it is there. Make this a bit wider here. And I don't want to use this hard-coded link. I really want event dot, I think it was called event dot image URL, event dot image URL. And I want it to be dynamic. So I just got to do that. There we go. Oh, this is interesting. My images aren't as nice as their images. I got all different size ones. So let's just set some height on this as well. And I'm just going to add some height. So I'm going to get height to 32, a little bit bigger, 40, 30, yeah, 40. And I'm going to say, and I don't want the image to be stretched. So there's a special command for that. This is all part of Tailwind. It's really easy to learn though. Object, cover. And there we go. So it kind of fits the image in. And I think, oh, yeah. There was one other thing in here too, right? Was this one in here? Line, clamp, 6 maybe, 6, 5, something like that. 4, 5, let's go 5. Save. And, sorry about this, guys. We have a pretty big team now. And somebody might not have missed it. I said, don't work on this server because I'm going to be doing a demonstration. So please don't break, because this is a thing that some of the team are working on debugging that we just discovered.
Which part of the service is that? Like, is the FM web connector?
Yeah. What happens is, and this is something we've made a change in our base code. So I always demonstrate with our latest code, right? Because in fairness, the truth is we really want to eat our own dog food. So if there's a problem, we're forced to fix it. We see it before everybody else, hopefully. Not all the time, but hopefully. And what's happened in here is that the with our new server deployment, when it sends more information to FileMaker, and FileMaker thinks it's a double login. So we're actually working on it right today. Eduardo, one of our team is, and fixing that. But in the meantime, I'll just turn this off because it'll almost accomplish the same thing. And then we won't have that. So this is what we ended up with, right? So here's real images, real data. Everything's coming from FileMaker here. We can pick the stuff up and we can sign up with it. And that creates the records back over here. Now, unfortunately, I have that one bug, so that'll correct itself in a few seconds again. And that is how you can build web apps. Any questions about some of that stuff, guys?
I have a question, Charles, just about something you mentioned in passing, which is the use of execute SQL. It's been a few years since I've put myself in a position to get bitten by it, but I remember that it used to have an idiosyncratic behavior where, depending on the locking status of records that you were referring to, the client might ask the server for the entire table before
it does. But this is running on server, so it never happens that usually. If you're on a client, then the client will download all the stuff and run it locally instead of running it on server. But this script is running on server all the time.
So it's performance agnostic or neutral.
Pretty much, yeah. It's very performant. Even though and you'd be surprised, even though the calculation is not stored, right? You can store it. You can do an auto enter and tickle it and make sure that the data is the JSON object is reflective of the data that it represents, the record it represents. But we almost never ever do that, because normally to the front end, you're not returning thousands of records. You're returning maybe 100 to 200 to 300. After that, it's useless information. Like if I showed pages and pages of these events,
Yeah.
that would be totally unconsumable by the front end, by the user. And since it's a display thing, you can only show so much data. The rest of it, you search the back end and you give them a found set.
Yeah, that's what I found. Like if you're searching against 1 million or even 1 billion records on an index field, and then you're returning an unstored calculation, 100 of them, it's pretty much instant.
Yeah. And it works really, really, really well. And we use it all the time for doing all kinds of stuff. Like I just need to get a preference key, right? And have you in your preferences table, you find that one record that you have in your prefs table. I mean, a lot of people have custom functions for this kind of stuff too, but you can use it just for that, grabbing one ID. I just need to know somebody's email instead of doing all this go-to layout, breaking context all the time, right? Just query it and it'll be a game changer, I promise.
I found that just using the native FileMaker, go to layout and enter find mode, set field perform find, and then using some way to get the data, it's almost like it's as fast as execute SQL in every test I've tried. Is that not what you guys are finding lately?
Yeah, and usually these processes are user triggered, meaning they're not running 1 million records. You're not repeating this. You're not iterating over this, whatever it is, this expensive thing, even if it took 100 milliseconds, which is crazy expensive, right? 1/10 of a second. You're only doing it once. You're clicking a button. So if your user waits, like if I'm in FileMaker and I click and I wait 100 milliseconds, it's probably not a bad thing. And that's incredibly slow. It's way faster than that, but I'm using that as an example. So, and
yeah,
so that's
like
the, yeah.
Google
sorry,
did a bunch of research a long time ago, like how fast users can actually perceive time takes, I can't remember the number, but like a person can't perceive 40 milliseconds or something like that.
Yeah, there's tons of studies showing that and how to handle different things. Do you fade the button out? Like for example, this button right now, is there a, nope, they didn't put that on. I think this one has, fade. Okay. It's actually not, if you look at it, it's gradual, right? It's very gradual. So when the button's coming up and it's fading back, or when you're doing the process, that can take up a little bit of perceived time. You can throw spinners in buttons, right? You can show a progress bar if it's really long. Like there's all different ways of handling different amounts of time. And it turns out, like we've even experimented in the app, and we're going to be getting rid of some of the things that are built into the framework of BetterForms. But we find it's actually better the app seems faster if we don't have any loading states, like don't have any spinners or anything like that. And you see this all the time when you're using apps. Sometimes it'll fade a little bit and then the new one will come in, and that's just to occupy time.
A quick question for you, Charles. Maybe you said it earlier, but when you're running a FileMaker script, I guess it would have to be data API compatible.
Like it doesn't have to be. You can use the data API, or you can use the
server
XML
compatibility.
Yeah. This one here, this app is using, I can't go to that page, but this app is using
Francois, I think you're saying like the script steps in the script have to be server compatible.
Yeah.
Oh, so here's how BetterForms works. It's running on your server, right? So it has to run under a credential. So we have a credential. You basically add a credential called BetterForms. It looks like this. So if I go into managed security.
By the way, we just have a few minutes left, so I'll run a little bit over, but.
Okie doke. So you can see this one says data only, data entry only. And if we were to look at the privs here, oops, no, okay. It's okay. It doesn't matter anyways. But it has the XML publishing and the data API, but it doesn't have. You can't even log in. So the credentials, I wouldn't say useless, but it's not usable, very usable outside of this ecosystem. And you can do all kinds of things. You can switch credentials as soon as it comes in the front door and all kinds of stuff. Like we have a security white paper and some techniques for doing that. Here, I'll finish off with just one thing. That one's actually a little bit different. That's more for authorization, what the user is allowed to do, and it's basically a set of custom functions. So I'll just finish off really, really quick. If you're interested in learning more about BetterForms, we do a lot of one-on-one onboarding, and our team is actually. Let me jump over to here. We have a great team. This is them. and they all work on different parts of the machine, if you will. We also do consulting if you don't have the time to build your app as well. We do build apps. In our community, there's a lot of developers who either dev houses or individual developers who build in BetterForms as well. We currently don't have this test drive plan available. It's getting really, really close to coming out. The main reason for that is we started developing software as a service wrong. We're thought as a developer and not as a sales aspect, because that's where our focus is. Focus is on the engineering, the tooling, and we're now building into a lot of onboarding things. So that's all coming out soon. Otherwise, Citizen Development Plan is $5.99. It allows you to build a number of different apps, up to 20 pages of app. Anything we've seen today is under 20 pages, almost all of them, except for the Demeter, the palm oil site. That's probably about 40 or so pages. The rest of them are all a little smaller. We also have a Pro Plan. Pro Plan basically allows you to do other things. You can have OAuth, so that means you can federated authentication services like Auth0 and Okta and Google and those kinds of things. You can use those for logins, and it also has no restrictions. The only restriction is you cannot build a vertical with that, which is a separate license, same price, but it's just a single vertical. So if you're going to build a pizza delivery app for your cousin, you can use this. If you're going to sell a pizza delivery app to everybody on this, everybody who owns a pizza shop, then you go with this plan. And that's us.
You mentioned also that you are working on a what you see is what you get type of builder. Do you have a timeline for that?
We do actually. Second quarter, the engineering is in the first quarter, the architecture. Second quarter is the build out, and the third quarter, which is around midsummer, is when we plan on having the betas for it. And I'll show you, see if I can do this real quick here. Charles test area, do pages. And it's called draggable editor concept. Here's something. This is kind of a sneakish, peakish kind of thing. Give you an idea. So this is built in BetterForms. And believe it or not, it took about an hour to build this. It's just crazy. So these are groups. You take inputs. I only have a few buttons here. These are the snippets that I grab them cutting and pasting. And that's effectively doing the same thing as cutting and pasting before. Remember, I added those extra keys. That's them here. So I just exposed this because for development, but you could basically drag groups up and down. I could add a new group into here, and then, put some inputs onto that group and move things around and so on. So that's what's in the works. Still gives us 100% full flexibility in the ability to really define anything as well. So we're really excited about that. That's going to be a game changer. Well, guys, thank you very much. If you do have questions, please, you can jump on our website here, and it's at fmbetterforms.com. Oh, incidentally, this website built in BetterForms too, and it's all responsive. So it doesn't have to be just apps. We just wanted to try it. It's not the ideal thing. I wouldn't recommend building marketing websites out of BetterForms, only because you lose some search engine optimization. But we did it because now in third quarter, we need to build that into the framework, right? So that's something that we're going to end up doing here as well. But you can book a demo anytime if you have any other questions and things like that. Happy to jump on calls.
Yes, you could actually build something that has no FileMaker link if you wanted to.
You know what?
Data directly in it.
We have a user, and I think maybe even have it here. It's a Node-RED. This is a site that was built by one of our users. It's a default template out of the box, and it's just showing alert. And this is running on his Node-RED instance. The back end is his Node-RED setup, and he's just running those hooks. So there's no FileMaker here. Purely Node-RED, right? You can do the same thing with N8N as well. Same idea.
Cool.
So don't technically need FileMaker, but it's so much easier.
Yeah.
It's like FileMaker is pretty awesome. So, all right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles.
All right. If you have any other questions, by all means, please feel free to hop on our Slack as well. It's available from our website as well. BetterForms and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great thing too, because you can like directly communicate with other developers who are using it if you don't want to.
Yeah, you know what?
you
We
guys.
had a critical mass about 2 years ago where I wasn't answering all the questions. And that was such an amazing, like, wow, we have community. There's actually people who jump in and some of the things, there's some of the things that people build. Like, let me see if I can, there's one, like wrap up. I'll see if I can find it. This one guy, he's got this whole preview video for his software as a service. And it's like, holy cow, look at all the stuff this thing does. Let's see if I can find him here. Here it is, copy. Check this out after a call here, because it's
like Jesse
a
Roberts. It's like
yeah.
his whole business that you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so like his whole entire, all of his FileMaker products are in 2 different industries are based on BetterForms.
yeah.
He was actually the main person that connected me to you.
Yeah, Jesse. Here's a guy. He's an entrepreneur at heart. That's his main forte, I would say. And he learned, he's a citizen developer. Learned FileMaker to facilitate the entrepreneurial stuff, startups and things. And then he learned BetterForms to do that. And watch the video. This is the app. This first app, his very first app, I helped him a lot with in onboarding. We do that. But the second one, we didn't help him at all. He built 100% on his own. And check it out in the video. Could maybe use a few little tweaks here and there, but it's amazing what all the stuff it can do. Just an average, typical citizen developer. So we're pretty proud of him that way.
He's not really average. He's really smart. Still.
Oh, he's a smart guy, absolutely. But I mean, he was a FileMaker developer, and he didn't know any web stuff. And suddenly he's got this entire software as a service platform, which is really cool.
It's true. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks very much for your time.
Well, thank you.
This was really great. I'm glad we got to get a good deep look at it.
Oh, thank you.
Charles, I'm tempted to say I hope Claris acquires your company. But I don't know if you would appreciate that.
It's interesting. We actually, it's interesting. So we got a long way to go before we're super FileMaker-esque. But I feel very, very confident that we'll stay ahead of the Claris curve. Right.
I think it's a fantastic contribution to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is exciting for me. I've got a couple things in the hopper that this might work well on too. So
yeah, it's WebDirect is not our competitor, right? To my knowledge, I don't know anybody who's switched away from WebDirect and used BetterForms. Because if WebDirect was working for you, then it works. It's where it's not, doesn't work is where our space is.
I kind of am. That's kind of my place. But I mean, I did my architecting at WebDirect, knowing that it wasn't really going to be deployable, but it at least did kind of what it enabled me to do it really fast. And then I discovered BetterForms and kind of, start building that. I'm really off to a slow start, but that's what it's like being semi-retired.
I was interested in looking at your Slack channel. But when I go on the website and I click on the page, it doesn't seem to load. Or maybe you
let
let us know when it works.
I will do that. I'm going to message somebody right now. And can you check out the Slack channel?
Because I really like the idea of being in communication. I like the idea that you have an access to Slack for people to share things or communicate with you.
Yeah, your Slack is certainly working.
I was very curious.
Yeah, I think it's a sign up. It's a sign up page. Something might happen to it.
Okay.
So we don't have.
Maybe I'll look in a day or two. And
yeah, do that. I'm going to have somebody look at it today. So.
Right. Thank you. I'll have a look. Thanks. So I'll have to go for my part, but really thank you for participating. It was very interesting. And I'll let you finish your conversation with everyone else.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I got to grab a quick lunch before my next thing.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting
everybody.
everybody. If I haven't